Let's get him in the back. It was only a 10-minute ride to the outskirts of the village and their small, neat cottage and garden. When they arrived, Jem picked up Amelia's patient and strode toward the back door, startling the kitchen maid, who was just coming out with a basket full of washing to hang on the line. "Oh, Mr. Harris, whatever do you have there?" Jem winked at the young girl. "One of Mrs. Smith's charity cases, young Dotty. Now, which room should I put him in?" After helping Betty down from the cart, Amelia followed Jem to the back door. "In the guest bedroom, please, Jem. It's at the top of the stairs, first on the left." He stomped up the narrow staircase and managed to open the door without Amelia's help. He laid his burden on the faded patchwork counterpane. "There you are, Mrs. Smith. He don't look too well now, does he?" "No, he does not." "How many of these soldiers is that now you've tried to save? 4, or is that 5?
5, I think, but I can't say I keep count."
"You are a remarkable woman, Mrs. Smith." She undid the plain blue ribbons of her bonnet, her attention on the soldier, whose breathing was definitely worsening. Jem cleared his throat. "I'll be off, then." She tore her gaze away from the bed and smiled at the innkeeper. "Thank you so much, Jem. How much do I owe you?" He patted her shoulder as he went by her into the hallway. "I don't reckon you owe me anything, Mrs. Smith. If you can help this man, then so can I." She clasped his work-roughened hand in hers. "Thank you, Jem." "You're welcome, Mrs. Smith." He closed the door behind him, leaving her alone with the wounded soldier. Amelia dispensed with her cloak and gloves and rolled up her long sleeves to the elbow. After a swift glance at her patient, she went back down the stairs and into the kitchen, where Dotty had set the kettle on to boil. "Good girl," Amelia said approvingly. "Bring some hot water and soap as soon as you can."
"Will you need help to get him out of his clothes, Mrs. Smith?"
Dotty asked, one eye on the cook, who was busy rolling out pastry on the kitchen table. "No, I think I can manage that." She addressed the cook. "If you have time, Mrs. Gibbs, could you make some thin broth for our invalid?" "Yes, of course, ma'am. When I finish with this pigeon pie, I can use the bones." "Thank you both." Amelia took a pitcher of the cold well water and a cup and brought them up to the guest bedroom. Their little cottage had 4 bedrooms, one of which they used as a sewing room, and a row of attic rooms which housed Dotty the kitchen maid. The cook lived in the village and came in daily. Being so close to the south coast of England meant that soldiers had become a common sight in the village as they marched by in formation to get to the shipping ports, or came back as their units were disbanded. Recently there had been several thefts from gardens, and the local hen population had mysteriously declined, infuriating Sir Timothy Spendlow, the lord of the manor, who had set his estate staff to patrolling the village boundaries as well as his lands. Having lived with an army on the move, Amelia was fairly sure where the hens had ended up, and not inclined to worry about it as much as Sir Timothy. When the government released unpaid soldiers who'd become used to foraging in a hostile country, they could hardly expect their behaviour to change overnight. Amelia set the jug of water down on the bedside table and closed the curtains against the unusually bright sunlight. Turning back to the bed, she began to ease the man out of his tattered regimental coat. He wore no stock or cravat, and his linen shirt was open at the neck, and so frayed in places that the weave barely held together. Letting out a slow breath, she worked the buttons of his breeches free and eased out his shirt tails. He didn't stir as she drew his shirt over his head and laid him back down on the pillows. Her fingers lingered on his shoulder, cataloguing the scars of combat that marked his narrow frame. The roughness of the skin under her fingertips made her slide her fingers lower. She'd seen men being flogged. The marks were there for life, and this man, this possible deserter, carried them on his back. Withdrawing her hand, she concentrated on his dusty boots, which, despite their age, fitted him like a glove, and had to have been made for him. That didn't sit well with her first assessment of him as a common soldier. She glanced back at his still face, the sooty sweep of his long eyelashes and the autocratic beak of his nose. A gentleman deserter? Surely not. She managed to get his boots off and then his stockings, which were heavily darned in several shades of wool. His stained breeches were good quality